Still hope you enjoy the show. Tonight, I want to welcome to Truth Frequency Radio a gentleman by the name of Dr. John, as he's known on YouTube. So, Doctor, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time out to visit with us and share some of your experiences, really as it relates to this topic, or this conversation of a flat Earth versus globe Earth.
Well, yes, it's good to be here, John, and talking to you because it's because this is quite a story, and I'm still going through this story. I am still living this story. I'm still investigating. I still have lots of questions.
Well, as any true scientist should probably admit, that's what their whole life is coming up with the questions, right? And then doing what they need to do to see how close they can get to the truth in asking those questions. So really appreciate that. So let's start out by just kind of talking a little bit about what you're willing to share about your education, your experience. You are a credentialed scientist, a PhD. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I've been through the British system, just like normal people do. The GCSEs, then on to sixth form. I did the 3 A levels. I'm in the 3 sciences, then to university, then to another university to do my masters, and then to another university to do my PhD research. So in terms of a scientist, I would class myself, yes, as a scientist, but again, more importantly, I would class myself as a critical thinker that uses the scientific method to help me think and help me realize a problem and apply that scientific method to try and solve the problem or to get results so I can try and solve the problem or find an answer to that problem or even not find an answer to that problem, but find more questions that problem needs. So in terms of my education, it's just your normal classical science education all the way through. So music, languages, forget it. That's definitely not me. You'd be wasting your time. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll save the music and art for another show. You and I can have a fireside chat about that. But we'll focus tonight on the work that you've been doing. And so, so now your PhD, your classical training, if you will, or maybe you would even use the term as I maybe would, your indoctrination, your programming, right? Going through the system there. Your training is in what specifically?
My training specifically is in spectrophotometry, so using light basically, infrared spectrometry, UV spectrometry, and visible light spectrometry. So it's all about light and the interaction of light with all sorts of materials, liquids, solids. So it's all about light basically. So you can see why I started to get involved in measuring light and using lasers. So you can see where I started to find an interest in this whole topic.
That makes complete sense, because that's really, I think, where a lot of people will start then when they start to question things. It's making some observations over great distances, and that has everything to do with light, right? Obviously, what we see with our eyes, the light that goes into our eye or our camera lens or whatever that is, that's where we're going to make those initial observations as we do those tests. So maybe before we get into specifically the tests and the experiments that you've done and the observations and conclusions you've drawn from those, can you tell us a little bit about why? That's always the key question. Why? Why did you begin, do you think, kind of looking back now, why do you think you started to question what you were told about the shape of the Earth? Why did that even begin?
Well, I have to say I didn't question the shape of the Earth. How it came about was again, it's pretty scientific. It's one of those scientific things where you find something by chance. You weren't planning it, and it's oh, that's interesting, because to me that's the most important word in science. When someone says that's interesting, because then you've got some amazing, like, you know, lots of questions on what's interesting. So of course I was part of my job is to like teach, and I was planning some like teaching on like magnetism and light, etc. And I was looking on YouTube for suitable like video, and on the side of YouTube, you know, that list of videos that came up, and there was something about shining light, you know, shining, you know, light across a frozen lake with like lasers. So I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. I wonder what these people are doing with light, because it's, you know, because it's my field.
That was your problem right there. You said that's interesting, so you clicked on it.
So of course I then start to watch the video, and they're shining light, and they're saying the lake is flat, and I'm thinking, what a load of like rubbish. Like, this is, of course it's not flat, it's curved. Yeah, of course it's curved. And then I start to watch more of these like videos, and I'm watching the videos, and my brain is saying, no, this is lies, but I can't tell in the video that these people are like lying, so I can see what they're doing, but we all know, you know, the videos could be chopped and changed and photoshopped. So I got to that stage like where I'm like, right, I have to prove this wrong, because this should not be on YouTube. This is just wrong, but it looks so real, and it will, and people will watch this, and they will think it's true. And I'm not having that, because, you know, with my classical my education, or me, I know this is not true. So no, you know, I can't stand. And again, like I say, part of my job is like teaching like science. So I want like people to know truth, to know the actual truth. So of course, then I was like, right, okay, I'm going to spend some money, buy some lasers, like, you know, buy like a telescope, and I'm going to investigate this, but not just investigate it. I'm going to prove this to be lies. And so then I got together like a group of friends who are also like scientists like me, and we went out and we started to do the tests.
Wow. So you took it upon yourself. You saw something online, and like you said, you could be anybody you want. You could say whatever you want. You can edit video, and you could try to pass it along as real. And so people throw these videos up, and I think I know which video you're talking about, because it made the rounds in the flat Earth community, which as being, you know, some very interesting, as you would say, evidence, you know, that water, if it always is flat, at least the surface of it, when it freezes, you would think that it would be as well, and that makes it a great place to go and measure to see if there is curve, you know, and to the Earth and that sort of thing. So, but you saw that, and you said, felt compelled. There was something inside you that said, I need to debunk this. Were you going to? Did you plan to do the experiments and then make a video as kind of a response to that? Is that kind of where this was headed?
Well, it's I watched like the videos, and I felt like, you know, they're wrong, that like they're lying about science, and I'm not going to have that. Do you know what I mean? It was like personal. It was like, no, like, this is wrong. You're not going to show this to people, and people aren't going to watch this and go, oh yes, like this must be right. It was like, no, I've had years of training. I know, like, this is lies. No matter what they're showing me, I know there's some, you know, like a, you know, trick like going on. There's like a magician's little trick that I'm not spotting, or like, you know, or like I don't have the chance, because it's, you know, just like video I'm watching. I don't have the chance to see like what they're doing, you know, to like trick me, and I don't want them like tricking people. So it, you know, so like I said, me being a scientist was like, no, like this has to be proved wrong, or like lying. So then obviously, and I did spend like quite a lot of money to buy the lasers, because they had to be shipped in from China, you know, and the telescope, and I've never used like a telescope yet before, like ever, or like cameras, but of course I then purchased like 2 cameras, quite expensive, because I was like, no, you know, this isn't going to happen. Like, this is partly my field, like this is light, this is what I've worked with, so no, like I'm not like going to have this. Wow. So, you know, so then I got some friends together to like help me out, and like they were kind of, they were more than willing to help me out, yeah, of course, because they, saw like the video and they're like, no, like this is rubbish. Let's just get this, like proved wrong. So we were gonna we're just going to do some of the experiments and like take some observations. We weren't going to, we hadn't even thought about making YouTube videos yet. We were just going to get out there, get some experiments just to see what it was like, just to even start to do like the experiments because obviously it's outside, it's across the sea for like miles and miles. So we just started to just experiment with like the equipment first before we planned the full scale thing. Plus, like taking like videos or like making all the PowerPoints. We just started just to play about with it first.
Yeah, makes sense. And I could see, from that perspective, to kind of relate to that, try to relate to that situation. It was also something that was going to be kind of fun. A couple of guys getting out there. You got some new toys, you got some lasers, you got some new cameras, and going out there and doing some of this and practicing the scientific method. That's what you were. Well, it's almost like what you were born to do.
We were doing real science. Like real science, absolutely real science. It was like amazing. And like one of my friend who used to be a scientist but stopped being a scientist, he was like, man, like I haven't done real science for like 5-6 years. Actually, like buying equipment, planning like the experiment, actually doing the experiment, just like fantastic. And of course, not just that, you were shining lasers, like on like the seafront. We, at a certain point, we had crowds of people around us, like asking us loads of questions, because there's lasers and we're just standing on the seafront. So everyone can see the laser beam. So loads of people like, like what's going on? Like, what are you doing? Well, we're doing some science here.
What about science? And I put that in, in kind of quotes to say the scientific method, the scientific process. What about that process gets you so excited? Because I can hear it in the voice when you start talking about doing real science. That's like it's very invigorating for you. What is it about it?
I have to. It's just yes, and it does, and I'm very like excited about like science because it gives you the chance to explore and find answers to questions and truth to like understand like where I am, like where I live, how things work around me. I mean, it's that thing. You're being a child again. You are exploring your environment. It's what we're built to do as human beings. I mean, when was that fascination knocked out of us that we stop asking questions? When do humans lose that?
Well, I was going to turn that around. Where do you think, because you've been through years and years of the system, and obviously, they didn't take it away from you completely because you wouldn't even be sitting here. But there's at some point when you obviously are learning about the scientific method, probably early on in grade school, in elementary school, you're learning about probably the scientific process. Where do you think, trying to look back now in your training, did you have to start taking maybe some things that you were told to be truths at face value and not where's the missing empirical evidence, where we come to an understanding, or we think we do, that we live on a globe that's spinning. Where do you think that line is crossed to where we're now obviously having to take that on faith, because that's not something that we can self-verify. And in fact, when we go out there and do some experiments, we're finding, making observations that don't seem to reconcile. Can you look back? Do you see a transition in your training where they get us to get away from the scientific method at some level?
I've got to say, and part of my job involves teaching as well, and it's very difficult. The whole thing of learning science these days is not learning science. It's content. It's learning content to pass your final exams. That's it. The exam system does not test your thinking ability. That's not what the questions do. They are testing what can you memorize, and and what can you then regurgitate to give the answer to the exam question. So unfortunately, I have to say, and it's partly me responsible, because because part of my job involves teaching, is that we teach content, not how to critically think about science.
Exactly.
Unless within the class that you are teaching, you are trying to push both at the same time. But exams do not reward you, for critical thinking.
It's your ability to regurgitate the material as needed is what they're doing. So they're teaching you. The system now teaches you. This is a kind of a statement, or a profound statement that I think it's profound, that the system now that the majority of people are going through, the public school system and universities, that they're teaching you how to take a test, not so much teaching you how to do tests. How to go out there and do exactly what you did, and that is roll up your sleeves, get out in the field, ask questions, come up with a hypothesis, the scientific method then, do the experiment, make the observation, draw conclusions, and then retest and change variables and that sort of thing. That doesn't seem to be practiced as much as it should be. Maybe it is in other fields, but when it comes to the topic we're talking about, it seems like that is kind of gotten away from.
Well, Paul, I have to say, I've been through the whole system, and it took me 45 years to start to think that for myself.
So it seems like it's designed to kind of keep you away from that at some level. The system is not, like you said, doesn't teach you how to think. It teaches you what to think, and not how to think critically. And
yes,
And definitely don't ask certain questions. There's some certain things that I think we're finding now that is unquestionable, so to speak, that you don't question these things. These things are universal truths. The science is quote unquote settled. And so we don't even need to go there. Is that what you found as well in your experience?
Well, not just even that, Paul. I know when students ask certain questions, some teachers just lie. They just lie to them.
Wow. Can you give me an example?
So, for instance, yes, I can give you an example. When I talk to students about gravity, and gravity can't be proven due to the strength of gravity compared to the force, the magnetic force, and the electric force, the electromagnetic force is billions and billions of times stronger. And when I told them this, I said, well, if you've got this electromagnetic force and it's billions and billions of times stronger, how can you even know that gravity is within there working? How can you? So I say to them, imagine me pushing you for billion times stronger than you are pushing me. How would we even know that you are pushing me? And then obviously they went to one of their other teachers, because they were a bit blown by that. So they went to one of their other teachers, and he said, well, yeah, they're all kind of one force. So gravity and electromagnetism are just all one force.
Just blurring the lines and causing confusion.
Yeah, I'm like, well, no, they're obviously not all one force. It either does exist and we can prove it, or we can't prove it. You're lying to the students, because it's then I mean, where do you go from there? Because we're talking science and scientifically here. You can either prove it or you can't prove it. If you can't prove it, say to the kids, we can't prove it, but this is what we think. But be truthful with them, because I'm always very truthful, So I mean, and they ask me loads of questions where I say to them, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer. That's way outside my field. I'm not going to just make something up. I could say something to you that sounds okay, and you would nod your head to, but I'm not willing to, because this is something that you need to go and look up, or this is my homework. I need to look this up, and I need to get back to you and tell you, what I found. But
Yeah.
but I've seen like this experience of other science teachers, lie to them. And of course, Paul, you know what I do. I specifically set them up with these critical thinking like exercises. They go to like the other science teachers around, and then they report back and say to me, oh, like like this science teacher said like so and so, and I'm like, oh right, really? Did you then speak to them about this, and did you ask them this? And the student says no, because the problem is that because the students haven't been taught, because the system doesn't teach them to like critically think, they never kind of like disagree with what you say. I could tell them like anything, Paul. I could tell them like anything, and like they would just nod their head and just believe it.
Exactly. That's the point. That's the whole point, I think,
really
of
shocking.
the system. So it sounds like you've got not that you were dishonest before, but it sounds like your teaching methods have changed a little bit since you started, let's just say your perspective changed on tutoring and teaching the youth of today and the leaders of tomorrow. You're trying to at least subtly get them to become critical thinkers themselves.
Yes. So I present to them, for instance, so some things I present to them, this is what we think so far, or like this is just one of the things we use to like represent, like, this is what we use to represent, real life, like reality. But like this may be like different, it's just, this is just something we use to like represent it, but it doesn't mean it's real. It's just like, like this is the best we've got so far, but it doesn't mean it's right. And of course, like these things change all the time. The way we view like reality has changed for years and years and years. Just one of them is the model of like burning and why burning takes place. I'm not sure if you've heard of the theory of phlogiston. Even the word is crazy.
No, not even.
So like scientists used to believe there was a substance inside stuff called phlogiston, and when burning took place, that was this stuff called phlogiston. And this is what everyone believed. And then, of course, we realised, it's not phlogiston. There's this substance around us that's needed for burning, and we all know what it's called these days. O2, like oxygen gas. And that's what everyone believed. There was this special substance inside everything, phlogiston. And of course, that was what we believed. Okay, fair enough, because that was the best we knew. It kind of worked in a way. It matched the observations, or like most of the observations. But then, of course, someone came out with this new theory. There's this gas around us. We can test it like scientifically. I can prove it to you, so I can show you data. And now we've changed. We don't believe in phlogiston anymore, And like people can go and read on this. So it's just like proving to the kids as well. Science is not a fixed thing.
Exactly.
It's always like evolving. We're always like redefining it. We're always just like refining it. We're always even completely changing it if we have to. That's what science is. It's not a like religion type thing where, well, like so and so said this, so do not like question it. No, you should be questioning all of the time.
Exactly.
If someone, like I say to the kid, if someone makes a massive statement to you about science, physics, whatever, it's your job to like challenge it and ask for proof. You have to ask for proof.
Great.
Show me huh?
Yeah, no, I was going to say we got a break coming up. We're visiting with Dr. John, credentialed scientist, PhD, talking about the scientific method. And in the second half of the show, we're going to be talking about the experiments that he's done. We'll be back in about 3 minutes. Don't go anywhere. You're not going to want to miss the observations and the experiments that he has been conducting. So stay right where you are. Welcome back to Paul and the Plane Live here on Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception. Another Flat Earth Truth Tuesday is continuing as we are visiting with Dr. John, a credentialed PhD scientist and teacher. So we've been talking a little bit tonight about the scientific process, the system, quote unquote, the system that in his classical training, and maybe some of the shortcomings it has about the scientific method and just believing what you're told. And that's kind of where we left off here. And we're going to be getting into specifically what those tests and experiments are that he and some fellow teachers undertook. So let's get going again, Dr. John. So you were kind of talking a little bit about how the students really, no matter whatever the teacher is saying, they're just nodding their heads, they're taking notes, they're expecting that this is going to be tested on, and so they're getting really good at regurgitating information, whatever that is. And what your methods now, it sounds like, and not that you weren't doing this before, but maybe more of an emphasis now on getting them to think critically, ask questions, and be skeptical, and to always test and always think about maybe better ways of looking at a question or a problem.
Yes, Paul. The problem is these days the students are just doing things to pass the exams. Yeah, if you see what I mean. All they want to do is pass the exam to get the B grade, the A grade. They don't. It's very difficult because their main goal is to pass the exam, not to think, just to pass the exam. So, and I find that really frustrating because, to me, the joy of teaching is to see your students thinking and just questioning. Surely that's why we train humans up. So I do say to them, okay, we'll pass the exam. I don't, that's what you want to do. You want to pass that exam, but my job is to build you as a critical thinker. So when you leave here, you're a critical thinker, because that's how you're going to benefit in life. No matter what job you go into, no matter what you want to choose to do for the rest of your life, to me, if you can critically think, that they're you're made for life. And surely people want to give people jobs who are critical thinkers. Surely.
Exactly. You're going to go a lot further, obviously, with with that sort of a skill than just the ability to regurgitate information, which anybody could do. Where you're going to separate yourself from the masses, so to speak, it's going to be in your critical thinking, problem-solving skills, and a lot of that is obviously practicing the scientific method and questioning everything. How do you find a better way to do it if you're not questioning the current way that you're doing it?
Yeah, totally agree. Because I say to my students, all of the companies out there, they want people who can critically think, who can take a problem apart. And I'm not one for making I'm not a company person where my whole life's just about making loads of money. To me it's but I do say to the students, if you want lots of money, if you can critically think, that's who the companies want. People that can save the money or make more money. So so that whether you're greedy for cash or not greedy for cash, critical thinking is the way forward. And again, as parents, we have to make certain choices in life, for our children. And I want you to be able to critically think about all of these choices that you will make, as a parent. So critical thinking to me is the most important skill. Like you say, content, the whole of human knowledge, I'm sure you can fit on a data stick. That's a robot's job. Humans, we do stuff with that knowledge. We take it, we think about it. Where can we use it? How can we apply it? That's what to me, that's the joy of being a human being, is that challenge of what to do and how to critically think. And again, it's that critical thinking that builds teams as well. You come across a problem, you don't know the answer, you then speak to someone else, that does have a certain skill, and that just builds all of the teams. And of course, us humans are such social creatures, and we thrive in teams. It's
well said.
It's there.
Yeah, and that's where, and that's what it's going to take. More people with that mindset and going out there and doing things like you've done. All right, I want to make sure that we get in some. I have some time to go through some of these experiments that you've been doing, because I think they're really, really amazing. And your strict adherence. I told you this before we started recording tonight. Your strict adherence to the scientific process is what really caught my eye in your work. So for those of you that don't know, Dr. John has published some videos showcasing, exactly that scientific method, what the process was, and the observations made. Everything was documented thoroughly and published. And I'll make sure that we include, obviously, a link to all of those videos that you can view after the fact. So let's kind of pick up where we left off in the first half of the show. And you went out and you spent some money. You invested in yourself with some lasers, with some cameras, and you got some fellow teachers or colleagues together and you all had this idea, obviously, to go out there and conduct these tests. So take us from there. Where did you start, and what was the idea?
Well, just like small boys, we started with the lasers. I mean, who wouldn't start with the lasers? Like the cameras, okay, fair enough. But the lasers, we had to start with the green lasers. They were far too much fun. They were amazing. So we knew it had to be, we knew it had to be along the coast. It had to be, right across the sea from one place to another place. So we knew it had to be across the sea, because the sea should be curved. So obviously you can't do it, with land, because land may be higher or lower.
Sure.
So living along the south coast of the UK, it was just the perfect spot. So we had people in different places along the coast, a few miles apart. I think we started about 10 miles apart ish, and we just went out just to see whether we could see each other's laser beams. That was it. We also had a bright torch each, and we just first of all just went out, nothing particularly planned. Let's see if we can see each other's laser beams and torches.
Sure.
So, and straight away we could, which we didn't expect to happen.
So you started with 10 miles. Was that an assumptive distance that you should not ever be able to even see the laser? I mean, I'm not sure how high off the ground we're talking here, but obviously you probably did some rough calculations to say, this should be behind the hidden height of a curve, or behind the curve, or whatever.
Yes. And then, of course, when we were standing by the beach, standing by the sea, we then, had our phones switched on, so we were talking to one another, and we would then just squat down lower and lower and lower till it got to the point where we were both kneeling next to the, next to the tide level. And
wow.
I was like, nope, this can't be happening. And I was like, well, this has to be due to refraction or something like that. So thus I then obviously had to go and read about, refraction, look up all the cases of refraction, inferior mirages, superior mirages. So I then, again, it was that beautiful period of learning again. I was learning. It was fantastic. I was doing this science, and then I was reading all the background, just soaking it up again, questioning it, looking for photographs that, that proved it or disproved it. So I then had to once again teach, because there's reflection, refraction, that you learn within the lab, but it's very different when you get outside, theory's one thing, theory's lovely, but once you get outside, then it's practical, that matters. So it was then learning, the practical of light and how it interacts with, the atmosphere. Yeah. So again, it was just back to learning again. It was, being a student again. It was brilliant.
I could see you got a big charge out of that, being part of that process again, and that's really why you probably became a scientist in the first place, was because you enjoy that whole process.
Yeah, we were doing science. It was brilliant. We were doing real life science, by ourselves, and we were doing the research, then like we were doing the practical, then we were looking at the results, trying to make sense of the results. What did they prove? What didn't they prove? What could we say to, like what like confidence did we have in these like results? How low could we get? How low could we get like to the sea? I mean, there was one point where I didn't care. I just walked into the sea. I wanted to see how low like we could get. So like boots on, I had on, like my welly boots, didn't matter. I just walked straight in. This was too fascinating. I didn't care about being wet. I didn't care about driving home being wet. I had to find an answer here. I had to find an answer because I wanted to prove these people wrong. So I was like, no, I have to do this.
Wow. So you guys started at 10 miles and then I know you increased. What's the longest distance then that you've shot a laser to this point to kind of try and measure, obviously, measure for curvature? That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to measure curvature.
The mileage, I don't know because we don't work in miles.
My apologies. All right, we'll do kilometers.
Yeah, unfortunately, sorry about that. Like 45
kilometers, so that's probably what 25 to 30 miles. Yeah. I'm assuming. Yeah. I'm an American, so we're stuck in the miles. I forgot what we even call that system, the standard system, even though it's not standard throughout most of the world. But we think we're better than everybody else. So our increments are much longer. So for those listening here in the United States, 20, 25 miles or so, and how high were these lasers above the surface of the water?
10 meters.
Got it. So
about like 10 meters. But this was like like we did them quite close, and then we thought, okay, let's go really far. According, we had to look at the coastline and go, okay, where's two good sensible like places? So we then went to those two sensible places. And we were both about 10 meters above sea level, and we could see each other's like laser source. And it was raining in one place at the same time.
Interesting, as we said.
So I was like, oh no. So once it got to that, obviously, I was confused. And I think a bit of what they call it, cognitive dissonance started to like kick in.
Okay, all right, yeah, take us through that.
It's like no, something must be wrong here. Something must be wrong. This doesn't match with like what I've been told and what I know.
Well, that's your scientific mind, right? You're questioning even the results. So you got to find ways of eliminating some of those questions, right? So what did you do from there?
Yes, and of course, because the lasers, we've seen lasers do amazing things. Like I've seen laser lights like bend in weird like directions over large like distances. Because it's across the sea. All of the, all the hot air, like the cold air refraction. I've seen some crazy like laser beams like bend and twist. So we decided to give the laser beams up for the time being, and we decided to just use cameras and the scope and focused on fixed points of light along the coast. And then of course that that lets us do like the calculations, like better because they're at fixed points, fixed heights. We know they're at fixed heights, and of course it would make the experiment repeatable, and it would make it reproducible. We could repeat it, and someone else then they can come along and they can reproduce it for themselves. So we decided to move from lasers to fixed lights along the other coast.
Makes sense. So what's the extent of the long distance photography then that you've done?
45 again. 45.
Okay, so you
23 miles.
Did the photography then provide, I guess, a level of validation or confirmation for your laser test then at some level? You were able to compare data, correct?
Yes, yeah.
So the lasers were propagating in a pretty straight line then, or at least at the same refractive levels that the photography did? It was consistent.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Okay, interesting. Well, again, it's light going through a medium, right? You've got ambient conditions that are affecting that. You've got the medium with different temperatures and humidity, like you said, and so there is a little refraction. So when you started to suffer, as you said, from the cognitive dissonance and said this can't be, there's got to be some other explanation, you obviously went and started to look at other research or other explanations. And one thing that I've heard, and maybe you came across, is that refraction is causing objects, whether it's the light or whatever, to be lifted up from behind the curve to allow it to be seen from great distances. I'm assuming you came across something like that. And what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
Well. First of all, I have to say, as soon as I started to doubt everything, I knew what I had to do was just observe. So for hours and hours and hours, all I did was just go down to the seafront and just observe. Not make judgments, just observe and kind of watch nature. Just watch. Let kind of almost let nature teach me how she works. Don't make judgments on her. Just watch and observe and see how she works. Each night. So I'd be down there, for a few hours just before sunset. So like this was during the summer months. So I'd be down there from 8. I would then leave about 12, like 1 in the morning sometimes, just to watch and gain an understanding. Because as you know, the textbooks are nice and easy, but once you're out there, it's a totally different ballgame. So I kind of said to myself, don't judge at the moment, just observe and experience, and let that experience shape your understanding, because otherwise I'm just going to jump to conclusions too soon. So I just had to watch. So I'd just go down to the beach and watch light sources and watch ships come and go, and I would just watch. I would, before I went down, I'd look at, the weather reports. I would look at the weather there, and I would try and gain an understanding of what I was seeing and how that was relating to, all of the temperatures, all of, the weathers. So before I wanted to even try and make a judgment, I just wanted to understand, if you see what I mean. Absolutely. So that would then make my judgment a more secure judgment. I would know that my judgment was a valid judgment rather than just jumping to one.
Very good. And then when you study refraction or these I guess other explanations on how you can see so far, despite there being a curvature of the Earth, what was your conclusion there?
Well, So obviously, this is quite a simple thing. This is land and sea breezes, though the sea heats up more during the day. I don't think got time to go into the science. The specific heat, capacity of water means it stores more heat energy before its temperature rises. And so it stores more heat energy during the day, and then it slowly releases it during night. Now, no one debates this. This is what causes land and sea breezes, and no one debates this. So, this is agreed. So during the nighttime, the layer of air just above the sea will be warmer than the air higher up than that.
Yep.
So refraction will occur in normal temperatures, unless there's freaky temperatures going on. Refraction will occur in an upward direction. That's it. Unless there's something freaky going on, that's how it is. And I know that's how it is because we've watched our laser beams and they always get refracted upwards. So I know it every single time. It's upwards every single time. If it does get refracted, it's always upwards. It's, that's what we've observed. I've never seen a laser beam being refracted downwards ever.
So how can if that explanation that we get holds true, then how could light? I'm left to see that doesn't seem to reconcile then, because we're told that light would be bending down and therefore we could see further. Or maybe I have that mixed up. How do you explain that to somebody?
Agreed. Light can be bent down if there's a temperature inversion, and then that will cause the light to be bent down. So like I said, unless there's some freaky weather conditions, light across water, not land, I'm talking across water, and especially at night, is always bent in an upward direction, unless there's a temperature inversion. But if there's a temperature inversion, you get a superior mirage, and you would see the superior mirage when you've got the object, you are looking at it, and there's one like just above it, which is inverted.
Yep.
So I've never seen one of those, and I've never photographed one of those.
So refraction is not an explanation for seeing that far, typically. And even if it was, then we should see like a Fata Morgana then, right? Which would be the inversion of the image, and it would be distorted a little bit.
Which is what then, like, I would be seeing and photographing all the time, which I've never seen and I've never photographed. So yeah, I have gathered no proof that supports that.
That refraction would cause us to be able to see further than we should.
Yes, I've gathered no evidence. I cannot show you a photograph that has that inverted, picture on the image inverted. I've never seen it, and I have to say, I live by the coast. I've lived by the coast most of my years, and if you ask most people along the coast that live along the coast, they've never looked along the coast, and they've never seen a superior mirage.
There you go. So we've only got a couple minutes left. The show's just flown by. So where's your head at here? You've been taught that we live on a globe, that we live on a sphere. Not to mention any of the movement of the Earth, but just the shape of our world. And I know you haven't been to every spot on the plane to measure or to make these observations, but at least where you live, in the places that you've been conducting these experiments, what's your conclusion?
My conclusion, Paul, is down to 10 centimeters above tidal level, the globe Earth-up model is indistinguishable from the flat Earth model, down to 10 centimeters above tidal level. So obviously, I can't say it is flat full stop, but I can say 10 meters above tidal level,
10 centimeters.
Two models, 10 centimeters
10
are
centimeters.
indistinguishable, down to 10 centimeters. Now, whether that completely changes down to 5, you can't tell, because the sea-air interface, that haze that gets in the way. But 10 centimeters, because if you look at one of my videos, I'm filming from Worthing to Brighton with my P900, and I'm 10 centimeters above the water. So I can say down to 10 centimeters, but the globe Earth model is indistinguishable from the flat Earth model.
Wow. That's, you know what? And that's what we would expect, because we've been taught one thing, and reality would be, obviously when you, like you said, when you get out there and you're in the real world and doing these experiments, some of those theories don't quite hold up.
No, and what is also really strange, Paul, is people that live along the coast actually see this every day, but they don't realise the distances are actually that short where you should not be able to see things. And like I said on my videos, if you do not believe me, phone, send a contact to the Royal National Lifeboat Institute that is situated on Selsey Beach, and ask them what they see every night across the water. So if you think I'm lying, if you think I haven't told you the truth, you've got to send one email to prove me wrong. That's all that anyone has to do.
Has anybody done it yet? Has anybody done it yet?
Well, no one sent me an email to say that I'm a liar. Let's just put it that way.
Well,
so,
you you guys can go. Anybody listening, I'll make sure I include the link in the video here for the show notes, so that you guys can go and check out some of this work. We've only got a minute left, so I want to say thank you, Dr. John, for staying up late there in the UK to visit with us. You got 30 seconds here. What's the last word?
The last word, right. If you don't think the Earth is flat, please contact the Royal National Lifeboat Institute that Paul is going to put up, and prove me a liar. Please prove me a liar. And if you can't prove me a liar, guess what? Welcome to cognitive dissonance. It's hard, but we all have to get through it.
All right, thank you, Dr. John. That was a great last word. All right, thanks for listening to another edition of Paul and the Plane Live here on Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception. Hopefully we'll have Dr. John on again in the future, and we can hear more about some of these experiments. Strange World with Mark Sargent is coming up next. Thank you again, everybody. We will see you next week, same time, same channel. Good night.